Hello! We're going to start our discussion of trigonometry, and we'll spend a few weeks talking about all the little details of trigonometry. We'll start off with a little description on angles. Some of you may be familiar with angles written in degrees, but there's a whole nother set of units called radians that we use in math class to express our angles. If you go on and study engineering, they have a third different type of units for angles, and those are gradients. But we're going to talk about radians throughout the class, so I want you to be familiar with what they are so you can use them no problem. Now it's very easy to convert from degrees to radians and vice versa. We've got this nice formula here. So it turns out that 180 degrees is equivalent to pi radians. So we can use that simple ratio to figure out what our angle in radians should be if we have the angle in degrees. So for instance, if I have 150 degrees here, I can just put that 150 and divide it by 180 and multiply the result by pi. Of course, we see there that there's a common factor of 30 in top and bottom, and we're just left with 5/6 pi. We tend to put the pi on top and call this 5 pi by 6. Okay? Now we can also have negative angles, and if I want to convert, say, negative 225 degrees into radians, again, I can just divide top and bottom, I can divide the top by 180 and multiply by pi. And here again we see a common factor. We notice that 45 goes into the numerator and denominator there. So we get negative 5 and 4 on the bottom when we divide top and bottom by 45. So that means that we've got negative 5 pi by 4 as our angle in radians. Well, if we want to go from degrees to radians, we divide by 180 and multiply by pi. So that means if we want to go from radians to degrees, we'll divide by pi and multiply by 180. So for instance, if I've got 2 pi by 3 radians, I'd like to convert it to degrees. I'll take that 2 pi by 3 and I'll divide it by pi. So I'll just stick a pi in the denominator there, and then I'll multiply that by 180. Well, again, we see there's a common factor of pi in top and bottom here, and we also have a common factor of 3 there and there. So we figure this all out and we end up with 120. That's 120 degrees is equivalent to 2 pi by 3 radians. Let's try another one. I take 11 pi by 6. Let me try this in another way. I can multiply it by 180 over pi. That's the same as multiplying by 180 and then dividing by pi. Again, we can look for common factors. So I see pi, of course, appears as a common factor. Again, we've got a common factor of 6. And we're left with 11 times 30, so 330 over 1. Well, that's 330 degrees. Okay? So those are our angles in degrees. If we want to just write a little conclusion to show the units. So our first angle is 120 degrees. Our second angle is 330 degrees. Alright, so you know how to convert from degrees to radians and vice versa. We will always use radians in class. We will never talk about degrees in our math class usually. So please make sure that you're familiar with radians and how they work. And you eventually want to get to the point where you don't have to convert back and forth. We'll think about angles in radians and only calculate and use angles in radians. Thank you.